Planned Parenthood's largest affiliate is removing founder Margaret Sanger's name from its Manhattan facility over what it calls her racist legacy. And what's a surprising admission from the abortion industry, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York is removing founder Margaret Sanger's name from its Manhattan facility because of what it called her, quote, harmful connections to the eugenics movement. In a statement released last week, a spokesperson for the affiliate called stripping away Sanger's name both a necessary and overdue step to reckon with our legacy and acknowledge Planned Parenthood's contributions to historical reproductive harm within communities of color. This is the same New York Planned Parenthood affiliate that in June ousted its CEO after an open letter accused her of unfair treatment towards black staff members, among other abuses. Planned Parenthood has long defended or deflected on its founder's eugenics past. Hear how a video celebrating Planned Parenthood's first 100 years addresses the controversy.
Margaret worked with civil rights leaders, immigrant women, and black communities, but also aligned herself with eugenicists. Ugh. It doesn't seem to make sense. But way back in the early 20th century, eugenics was an immensely popular social movement, one with the kind of widespread legitimacy Margaret craved for her own birth control campaign.
It used to be they would simply deny that she was a eugenicist at all. And then the internet happened, and they couldn't deny that anymore.
Dr. Angela Franks is a Catholic theology professor and author of Margaret Sanger's Eugenic Legacy. She tells us Sanger and other eugenicists sought to manipulate the human race through selective breeding.
She believed that the world was divided up into the so-called fit and the so-called unfit, and that she wanted to ensure that the unfit were not going to have children.
Dr. Franks says Sanger's worldview can be summarized by a slogan the Planned Parenthood founder wrote in her journal.
The slogan goes, quality, not quantity. And so for Sanger, eugenics safeguarded that quality side of the equation.
Planned Parenthood is not the only organization grappling with Margaret Sanger's legacy. U.S. Representative Russ Fulcher, a Republican from Idaho, has renewed calls to remove Sanger's bust from the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. In a letter to the Secretary of the Smithsonian, the congressman writes, quote, as our nation struggles to address racial injustice, it is unconscionable that an avowed racist and eugenicist is featured so prominently. Representative Fulcher called Sanger a bad apple in American history.
She flew under the guise of championing women's health, when in reality, her motives were significantly different.
The Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery has confirmed to EWTN News it moved the bust of Sanger from its Struggle for Justice exhibit to elsewhere in the museum. Christina Bennett is the communications director for the Family Institute of Connecticut. She's also co-chair of Pro-Life Voices for Trump. Christina, welcome back. What's your reaction to this news? Planned Parenthood's largest affiliate will remove Margaret Sanger's name from its Manhattan facility.
Thank you for having me. My response is that this is not enough by any means. If they really want to reckon with their racist history, they need to stop targeting communities of color. Planned Parenthood of Greater New York is still performing abortions, and they are still primarily performing abortions for women of color. So it's ridiculous for them to think that they can remove themselves from Margaret Sanger's legacy when they are killing black babies every single day at their abortion clinic. It's evil, it's wicked, and they are living out the mission that Margaret Sanger had, although they say they want to distance themselves from her.
Christina, in reviewing Margaret Sanger's work, she wrote and spoke frequently about population control and considered some people, quote, unfit. What's your reaction to Sanger's eugenic ideology?
Well, I think it's disgusting. I mean, she was talking about people like me. You know, I was someone that was scheduled to be aborted, but thankfully my mom walked out. But she was targeting people like me, people of color, you know, women of color that she felt were like weeds that should be pulled out of the ground. And not only did she push birth control, but she also supported forced sterilizations for black women. So I just think that everything that she did, from the Negro Project to wanting to put birth control in the water to supporting forced sterilizations for women of color, it was evil. And unfortunately, today it's still being carried out through Planned Parenthood, whether or not they want to admit it.
Christina, this is the same New York affiliate that recently ousted its CEO after an open letter accused her of racial discrimination, among other abuses like financial misuse. What do you think is going on there?
I'm not really sure exactly. I think that there are staff members perhaps who understand that racism is wrong and they want to do something about it. And so I see that they are, starting the process by firing this woman and even trying to reckon with her history. But again, it's not enough unless they really do the work of completely removing themselves from the mission and vision of Margaret Sanger, which would mean stopping abortion, stop targeting women of color, and stop killing unborn children, because New York has the highest rates for abortion. We're talking about a place where more black babies die every single year than are even being born. Their death rate is higher than their birth rate. So perhaps with what's happening across the country, there are staff workers who think, okay, we want to be part of this change. We want to be part of this movement for racial justice. And I understand that. But it takes more than just lip service. It takes more than just doing shallow things or virtue signaling. It takes real work. And that's going to include primarily separating themselves from abortion, because abortion is the #1 cause of death in the black community, and you cannot stand fully for racial justice and at the same time end the lives of black children. It's not possible to do both of those things at the same time.
I mean, that's my next question. Does removing Margaret Sanger's name from an abortion facility divorce her vision and legacy from Planned Parenthood's mission right now?
Absolutely not. I mean, they can kill children in their facilities under any name, and the action is still the same. So whether they want to call themselves Planned Parenthood of Greater New York or Margaret Sanger, whatever they want to name their building, the action is what matters. That lives are being taken every single day, that women are being wounded, that fathers are being wounded, that the botched abortions are taking places, that baby body parts are being sold on the market, that women are being lied to about fetal development. All of these things that take place every day under the banner of Planned Parenthood. They can call it whatever they want, but the action remains the same, and it's wrong. It's injustice. It's dehumanization. It's wicked, and it needs to stop.
Christina, the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery has moved a bust of Margaret Sanger from its Struggle for Justice exhibit to elsewhere in the museum. Would you like to see the Smithsonian take further action there?
I'd like to see it completely removed. There's no point for it to be there. I mean, struggle for justice. Abortion is the greatest human rights injustice of our day and of our time. There should be Margaret Sanger has nothing to do with justice. If anything, it was a false justice movement because she unfortunately, through the Negro Project, lied to and manipulated and convinced African American ministers and civil rights leaders to stand with her. But that was because she manipulated them. So if we're going to look at her history, then we have to look at all of it, and we'll realize that this woman did not stand for justice, and there should be no bust of her really in any museum at all.
We just have a brief period here, Christina, just to address there are serious conversations about race and racial reconciliation happening in our country. Could this be a moment more people's eyes are open to the reality of Sanger and her work?
I hope so. I would say that the one positive from Planned Parenthood of Greater New York changing their name is at least it validates what we've been saying about them for a long time. Pro-lifers have always said that Margaret Sanger was a racist, that she had a Negro project, that she targeted people of color, and Planned Parenthood and their employees and staff, they've always denied that. They've looked the other way, they've downplayed it, and now we can point to what's happening, we can point to the name change and say, see, this is the reality of what's going on. But again, more has to be done because they're going to say, oh, well, a lot of people were eugenicists at the time and she partnered with them. And that's not true. She didn't just partner with them. She was leading the way. So even though we can point to what they're doing right now as evidence, we still need to tell people, don't just believe what they're saying. Research it. Read
Absolutely.
Sanger's own writings, because I firmly believe if anyone was to read her own writings, they would be disgusted and appalled.
Christina Bennett with the Family Institute of Connecticut and Pro-Life Voices for Trump. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
We continue this conversation with Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List and the other co-chair of Pro-Life Voices for Trump. Marjorie, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York has removed Margaret Sanger's name from the building, but you say that is not enough. Can you outline what further action you are calling for?
Yeah, a name change is something good. The fundamentals are what has to change when it comes to targeting the minorities among the minorities, the babies among minorities. So we want to see this organization publish the historical data that's reflective of the fact that they have targeted minority communities for many, many years. So let's see that, that historic data according to race. They haven't let that information out. I can understand why. Now the country should be calling for that data to be released so that we can see their numbers and the consequence of their targeting of that community. Also, they need to stop their fierce opposition to anti-discrimination abortion laws across the country. They're passing everywhere for all the right reasons. Abortion is an abomination, but again, it particularly targets the vulnerable among the vulnerable. Children with disabilities, sex selection abortions, and ethnicity. All are targets of people who have a lot in common with Margaret Sanger. So stop that opposition, get behind it because of how menacing that opposition has been and how harmful it has been. And then thirdly, it may be just a symbolic act, but we think it's very important for Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton to disavow Margaret Sanger and to give back the awards that they have been given by this organization. When Hillary Clinton received hers, she called Margaret Sanger her greatest hero. Well, let's see what she thinks about that now that others know more about this great hero of hers. They need to give the awards back.
Marjorie, can you speak to how Sanger's works really twisted how our culture views women and fertility and how that continues into today?
Yeah, you know, it's why Susan B. Anthony List is called the Susan B. Anthony List. Abortion is the ultimate exploitation of women. And Margaret Sanger, none other, would she target them and demean women by targeting them and their children for extinction. She called Catholic immigrant moms useless breeders. Certain segments of the population, like Negroes and those who were called mentally retarded or defective in that time, that they needed to be weeded out. They were human weeds among the beautiful and the proud and the beautiful and the chosen. Then they needed to be eliminated. Anyone considered not up to her par. What a powerful place to be. This organization is not health care for women. It never has been. Contrast it with the beautiful view and the beautiful picture that Mother Teresa provides. Loving women, loving their children, saying it's crazy to think that you would want fewer children. It's like saying you should have fewer flowers. Such a beautiful view and such a contrast to this woman who didn't see women as equal necessarily, only for how they produced appropriate progeny.
As you mentioned, we've seen pro-abortion politicians embrace Margaret Sanger. How has that happened, and is she still an accepted figure among abortion advocates today?
Well, she is. We're in a moment of historic correction, I believe, if the pro-life movement continues its press against the pro-abortion movement clinging to her name. It's not just the clinging to her name, however, it's the clinging to the roots of the abortion movement, which is why it has her name in some of these places. It's clinging to the idea that somehow, in this utilitarian, horrible way, that we weed out people who won't give us trouble later, not recognizing that each child is sent for a specific purpose that only he or she can perform, and we have no idea what that plan is for that little boy or that little girl. That's what needs to be rooted out. The idea that somehow we know before they're even born what they will accomplish or won't accomplish in life. That's what has to go. And I hope that, yes, Margaret Sanger's name will be set aside and we'll all see her for the woman and the mission that she fought for.
Absolutely. Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List, thank you for your empowering work and words.
Thanks, Catherine.